I want to talk with you for a little while today from the thought. This is part 5 of this particular text, moving from reproach to purpose. Moving from reproach to purpose. Part 5, moving from reproach to purpose. If you'll be so kind to share our subject with someone sitting near you, moving from reproach to purpose. Amen. I wanted to share with you from a different angle this particular part of this sermon based on the fact that as we glimpse this particular time in Israel history, I believe that it is important that we begin to look at it from this perspective, that God continues to try to share with them his love and his care for them. I read Isaiah 46, even though it is chronologically years ahead, years before or after this particular episode took place in the book of Joshua. But I wanted to capture the fact of what God was attempting to do as he used certain words in Isaiah that are comfortable for me to use today. He reminds them, he twists the focus and tell them to remember former things. He talks about former things, and I wanted to focus on that more than anything else because it drives home what he does in the very 5th, 4th, and 5th chapters of Joshua, as he talks about taking stones from Jordan and taking them and placing them in the camp that they might remember. He recognizes that in life itself, in victories as well as defeats, it's very important that one remembers the past, not for the purpose of allowing the past to wrestle you down. But when one is truly healed, they can look back at their past and begin to rejoice because of the victory. The symbol of where you are today is a sign that you had victory yesterday. Because had not you had victory yesterday, you would not have made it like you have to today. And so when one looks back, it's always a symbol of the goodness and graciousness of God. He tells them, remember the former things. Remember what I have done for you. When you get in your promised land and things get tough, when you get in your Monday or Tuesday and things get hard, remember that this is not my first time, that I have done this before. He talks about the fact, and he used this to ignite their memory and to help them, because this whole story about Gilgal starts in Egypt. It starts with the fact that God's people have somehow been enslaved, and they are building a city with the strength of their own backs, and they're not being paid, and they are crying out to God and asking the Lord to come and set them free. And God hears their cry and takes a wanted man who's on the backside of the desert in hideaway and isolation, trying to get away from everybody, and takes a bush, sets the bush on fire, but give the bush burning power. And the bush burns, but it won't burn up. Y'all don't hear me today. He looks and notices the flame is not going out, but the bush is staying alive. It catches his attention, and he goes, and God speaks to him and said, Moses, don't look at what you can't do, but just hear me and go tell Pharaoh, I said, let my people go. And Moses said, you don't know, God, I got a speech problem. He said, you ain't got to say much. He says, but I've been wanted in there. He says, but when I asked him who told me to let him go, what shall I say? God said, just tell him I am told you to let him go. And I stopped by to tell you because as they got to Jericho, as they won battles with the Hittites, the Jebusites, and all of the giants of the land, they had to understand that to continue to be victorious, they had to have a strong memory about the power of God. And when I look at the disasters that have happened in this time and all the things that are going wrong, we can't have joy if you don't have a strong memory. You'll worry yourself to death if you don't recognize what the Lord can do. If you look at the Times and read the headlines, if you keep looking at CNN and Fox and all the news stations, you'll lose hope and you'll find yourself in a cocoon trying to get away from it all. But I stopped by to tell you, this is not God's first time. I just wanted to remind you that he's been here before. He's come through famines. He's come through hardships. He's come through wars. He's come through trials. He's brought us through loneliness. I know I got somebody here. He's dealt with sickness and death. He's dealt with hurt and pain. It's not his first time. Can you tell your neighbor, you don't have to worry. This is not his first time. You're not dealing with an inexperienced God. You're dealing with a God that sat down on the banks of nowhere, spoke into somewhere, took something from nothing and made this world. You're dealing with a God that theologians term him the ex nihilo, which means he has the power to take nothing and operate in nothing. He can take nothing and fill your bank account. He can take nothing and strengthen you. Somebody here has had to live almost on nothing. And God never left your side. Can I just talk to you today? He says, remember the former things. I want you to remember, because you need to remember when you got to the Red Sea and Pharaoh's army was behind you and the Red Sea was in front of you and all you had was a rod. Remember, I told Moses to lift up his rod. Remember how the sea parted and they made a song out and said, Mary, don't you weep, and Martha, don't you moan. Pharaoh's army got drowned in the Red Sea. He said, remember when I fed you in the wilderness. Remember how I healed you by putting a snake on a pole. Remember how I defeated the Jebusites, the Hittites. And I stopped by to tell somebody who came in here worried and half sleepy this morning, I stopped by to tell you, remember. Remember where he brought you from. Remember where you used to live. Remember what you used to wear. Remember how you used to act. Remember what you used to have. Look at your bank account every once in a while and just remember. Tell somebody it's good to remember. Because if you ever remember and you look at what God is doing for you right now, oh, I wouldn't have to ask you to shout. I wouldn't have to ask you to give him glory. If you ever would remember what he had to bring you through to get you to where you are right now. If you ever remember how he worked on you and taught you and blessed you. Am I talking to somebody that every once in a while you wake up in your house remembering and look around and just hold up both hands and throw back your head and say, it is good to remember. Because our foreparents had the power to use memory. They had created power in faith. They just knew how to connect to God. I remember, I said this in the early morning, how they used to sing songs about stuff they didn't have. They would sing songs on the grips of the slave master. They would say, swing low, sweet chariot, coming far to carry me home. And they didn't own a house. But when you remember God, you can shout about what you can't see your own. They just knew that if I know God, I might not have a home, but God got a home for me somewhere. And somebody here today who going through some of your deepest trials can't see your healing coming, can't see your way out, can't see your family being okay. But I stopped by to tell you, you got to sing, great is he that's in me, great is his faithfulness, new mercies I see. You got to sing past me not. You got to sing glory to his name. Anybody here can sing about something that hadn't happened yet, but you know that if you stick with God, God just gonna bring you through. Can you tell your neighbor, that's his reputation? That's just what he's done for me. That's just how he's acted with me. How many almost lost it, but God pulled you back just in time? How many almost got away from you? Can you shake somebody's hand and say, it almost got away from me, but God recovered me? Most of us, without even knowing, have almost lost our life at some time or another because we've been in the wrong place at the wrong time. But God, he looked beyond our faults and saw our needs. And don't you know he took care of the situation? And so we have to learn how to remember. And so, my brothers and sisters, I don't want to hold you long. So if they were going to move past the reproach back to purpose, that was three things they had to do. See, in order for you to ever move from reproach, you can claim it, you can name it, but you got to do some things to move. God can take it away. He can wash your slate clean. Matter of fact, can I tell you, there's not a person in here that God didn't clean your record. Can I say that again? Because you must not know it. If you know you, and your record is now clean, you owe somebody some praise. Tell somebody, he cleaned my record. Took mistakes and turned them into blessings. Took mess ups and turned them into miracles. I'm preaching to myself now because y'all evidently hadn't been there. He took loss and turned it into gain. Oh, he took hopelessness and made it hopeful. If you're going to move past, you got to get these three things. The first thing that you have to do is when one is